So Ollie, is that as good as it's going to get today? You're in your director's chair and you're not doing anything. You're not joining in. Probably just as well because there's some embossing powder going to be happening. So and a new ink pad. So it probably is a good idea that you stay there. But if you're refusing to work and hanging out for more cat food, it's not happening. I just wanted to tell you that. Hi there, it's Anne of Rosie Duck Designs here. Thanks ever so much for joining us today. As you can see, it is another family orientated video in that I have my trusty cameraman Jim with me and my not very willing to work director. I have to say this video is not particularly a crafting video, it's just a video with some information that I just wanted to share with you. The first piece of information is in my last video when I used the Embossing Buddy to do some embossing. I made a big point about how useful having an embossing buddy is. It was only after that, when I was putting the details of all the products that I'd used, that I couldn't find an embossing buddy in the new catalogue, which was slightly embarrassing, and I can't find it, so I think it's no longer available. I've tried to stick it on my shop and it's not coming up either. So actually I have no idea why we're not offering the Embossing Buddy anymore, and it's also made me realise that I really do need to pay proper attention to the retiring list. It's definitely a good plan, something I've learned. Now I stand by the fact that an embossing buddy is an invaluable piece of equipment to have when you're doing any embossing. So it spiraled me into a sense of panic, and it's amazing what you find on YouTube. So I would suggest that you have a look on YouTube, but I've come up with my ideas, and that is to literally, this is the Stampin' Up one, and I've got to say I've had this for probably 3 years and it's still got an awful lot of wear in that to go, but I made myself this. It's not pretty because I make cards, I don't sew. As you will testify, won't you, when your sort of buttons fall off, or you know the hem on your trousers needs sorting. We wear things fashionably long or have curtains draping. So no, I'm not a sewer, but needs must and all that. So I've made this literally using a piece of tuber grip, so the sort of thing that you put round your arm when it's sprained, which mine was kind of when I'd done this stitching, I have to say. So I literally cut a piece about that size. I cut it into two, and you're looking for a piece of material, so something like this. It's got these very fine holes in it, so muslin or gauze, but it's got to have a firmness to it, so it's no good like a bandage. That would be, I think, too thin. So anyway, I came up with this. So all I've done is I've stitched across the bottom here, and then I've turned it inside out. I'm not stitching another one, I have to say, but it needs a bit of imagination here. So this is now going to be stitched, and then I've filled it with some talcum powder, which is, I don't know, that's
advertising Tesco's.
Yes, sorry, probably shouldn't do that. Yeah, it's probably not even on the shelves anymore. I had this many years ago. It's not something I use, but it's I had it when I was doing reflexology, and we used to have to use baby powder then. I don't know whether you still do. I'll have to ask my friend that still practices reflexology. But anyway, I filled it with very old talcum powder, and then I've literally stitched it very firmly across the top there. So it's an odd shape, and I'm sure anybody with some needle skills could come up with something a lot prettier, but it did the job. I found out on YouTube that actually it's the static on the card that makes the powder stick to it. So it was a bit of a science lesson for me as well. But and somebody mentioned that if you use the sheets that you put in a tumble dryer, when it's expended, when you've actually used the sheet, you can rub the sheet over your piece of card, and that stops the powder sticking. I have no idea whether that works or not, but that was an idea that somebody else came up with. And as I say, it amazed me how many videos on YouTube there are about how to make an embossing buddy. But I just wanted to share that with you, because the reason I say that embossing buddies are an invaluable tool is because I use this little stamp here from the Heartfelt stamp set. Now that one, I think you'll have to get in a bit close to that, but that one I used the embossing buddy with, and this one I just used the Versamark pad with the powder. And I don't know if you're picking up the bits here, so it's not a clean image, whereas that one is. So I don't know whether other craft stores, whether they actually have embossing buddies. I've got no idea, but this was just a little idea that you can make your own. So to that end, we're going to just use the one I've made in the hope that it works. And I'm going to use the Lighthouse from the Sailing Home stamp set, because about 3:30 this morning, when I couldn't sleep, I had this card running around in my head that involved a lighthouse. So we'll do that now in the hope that we can use it on a project at a later date. So because of the size of the stamp, I'm bringing my Versamark pad to my stamp, and I'm going to rub my piece of card just over with my handmade embossing buddy. Put that down. I've never actually heat embossed a lighthouse image before, so I actually don't know whether this is going to work.
No, she says.
Now I say. Well, it adds to the drama, doesn't it, of our videos. So I've got my white embossing powder. Oh, it doesn't look bad, does it? Who knew? So as you can see, I've just used a spare piece of paper to just catch the powder before I put it back into my pot. Now just shake or tap your piece of card, and I think this is actually very clean, but you can preferably use a paintbrush that hasn't got a cat's hair hanging onto the end of it, and just take off anything that you spot that shouldn't be there without obviously damaging your image. That's not embossing powder, that is another cat's hair. Nothing changes, does it, Ollie? I won't bother saying I'm asking questions later because you'll sound asleep. So I'm just going to heat that up and see what happens. Oh, that woke you up, didn't it? Sorry about that. Never mind. Now you know how we feel when you wake us up at silly o'clock. So there we are. There's our heat embossed lighthouse, which I will then cut out with the coordinating dies. So I hope you can just see from that actually these little handmade unattractive embossing buddy does the job, and it's actually worth putting in the effort to get yourself either make yourself one or track one down, because it does make embossing much more successful. So we'll be visiting this hopefully in another project if the card that I've got in my head it actually works the way I think it's going to work. So that was my first little bit of information. The other piece of information I just wanted to share with you was I have my new InColour ink pads here. And I always think it's a good time of year. We always get 5 new inks at this time of year when we have the new annual catalogue. And I think it's one of those things that it's very easy to take for granted that we all know what we're doing with them. And yet, if we're just starting out, then there's a couple of tips about the ink pads that perhaps you're not aware of. So I just want to cover that really. So that's our 5 new colours. I've got them stored here in the plastic storage that Stampin' Up have made available. Excuse me, just get that out of the way. I can just share that with you on this page. So it's page 145 of the annual catalogue, and it's got all the different storage options there, and you can literally start with one piece and build up as you go. So this one that I've got here is designed to take the ink pad and it's coordinating a Stampin' Right marker. Now I have to be honest that since I was frightened of stamping blends to start with, never used them, but I've kind of got into them and I'm veering much more towards them than I am the Stampin' Right markers. Now that's just a personal thing, so I haven't actually at this point got coordinating Stampin' Right markers for these. So I've just put random ones in here just to show you that that's what happens. The great thing also, you have the stamping blend tray, which is you've got slightly wider elements here to enable you to put your stamping blends in. However, they work for these, so I've actually now got all my selection of these. I've got them in a stamping blend unit, so it's the point of that is that you actually want to store these pens and the stamping blends, you want to store them horizontally, because if you go that way or that way you're draining the ink, and so making the lifetime of your stamp, or your stamp, sure. your marker, it shortens the life of your marker, so you want to store them horizontally. So we have all the storage elements here. There is a blog post somewhere on my blog which I'll try and track down and put that on the front of this video. But literally, as I say, you can start with a couple of elements and build up from there. You've got some handy trays to put your little pots of embossing powder or your ink, the little pots of ink that you can top up your ink pads with. So well worth, if you've not got a storage system, well worth contemplating treating yourself periodically to one of those. So I'm just going to pop these back, leaving one out, and I just want to share with you a couple of elements of an ink pad. So it will come all wrapped up in plastic, which I have obviously taken off. So this is the new Just Jade. Now underneath on the bottom here we've got the name of the ink pad in various languages, but obviously I want the English version. And there's also, let me just take this off, so you've got a little arrow here, so I want the English version, so I'm just going to pop that out. I'm just going to stick it on the side of the desk there, and at the other end here, after the other languages for the colour, there's a blank piece of plastic, which is basically the colour of the ink. So we want those two elements. Now when you store your ink pad is, this is your top, it opens like a compact, but when you're storing it, you want to store it upside down so that the ink falls falls to the top of your pad. If you have it this way up, you've got your ink draining down to the bottom, so that when you're ready to use it, you haven't got the ink where you need it to be. So by storing it like this, the ink goes to the top of your ink pad where you want it to be for when you stamp. So you actually want to put the name of the ink, you actually want it basically upside down, if that makes any sense. So that's your upside down pad, and you're just going to put that across the top here. There's just enough space to fit that in. So that when you put that at the bottom there, when you're storing your pad correctly in between use and it's in your storage unit, you've got all your names the right way up so you can read them. And then inside, the ink pad just pushes together like that, and you've got this little area here, and that is designed to take this. Now there's a good reason for this. I'm just gonna, this is why I'm only doing one on camera. That went rather better than I anticipated, I have to say. So I'm just using the top end of my paintbrush to push that down. So now I've got my pad like that, and I can now see the colour of the pad that I'm using. Now, for example, if you have a couple of greens out there, they can, or you've got two pads open, you can very easily stick your stamp into the wrong ink pad. And trust me, I'm sure we've all done it, but I've certainly done it. So I'm getting a raised eyebrow here, but yeah, it's very simple, Jim. To be fair, really is. I did it at the weekend, so I know these things. So if you can get into the habit of looking at the colour here, then you're much less likely to stick your ink pad or your stamp rather into the wrong ink pad. So that was it. That was just really a couple of little tips that I wanted to share with you today. So there's, as I say, no particular crafting going on, although hopefully we will revisit the lighthouse another time. So that is it basically. So usual links on the front of the video, and I will be back with another crafting video very soon. But until then, do take care. If you've enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, that would be great. And if you'd like to subscribe to my channel, I would also appreciate that very much. But yes, that is it for now. I don't know whether you can get a shot of the washing cat, just so he can say goodbye to his to all these people that really watch my videos for you, Ollie. They don't watch them for me, really. Are you going to say goodbye to everybody? It's not even hot today. I bet we'll pause the camera and then you'll be all active. Sorry, no, I didn't mean pause it. I meant once we've stopped it, he'll probably start trying to, pull everything off. Life. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's playing his part today as a poor little cat. He's got no energy. So anyway, it's goodbye from me, it's goodbye from Jim, and it's goodbye from Ollie, and we will see you again very soon. Bye bye.